Firstly, thanks to my friend here who's organizing this wonderful session, and I believe he's doing a great job in forecasting the future, catalyzing the transformation in this sector, and disseminating information of how this transformation is happening across the globe. I believe that this energy transformation is the biggest transformation in the world, along with electric vehicles, because both transformations are happening together. And luckily, electric vehicle transformation also has a very positive impact on the energy transformation. I was in telecom for 20 years, and I led that telecom revolution. And luckily, Airtel, a company I led, is 400 million customers now, from scratch. And today, India has more than 1 billion phones, and we are, in Airtel, we were in more than 5 lakh villages, 500,000 villages of India. And I really feel very gratified that that transformation did impact the society of India and did go down to the bottom of the pyramid. And I think we are heading for this transformation, which is energy transformation, also in the same direction. The world is today suffering from two issues. Issue one is that there are parts of the world where there are shortages of power, and it's researched that 1 to 2 billion people don't have power for 24 hours, which is a huge gap, because power is basic utility like water. And second is that the growth in many countries has to be led through power growth, and in many parts of the world, power growth is not growing as much as the GDP growth. And finally, the environment is getting from bad to worst. The climate change pressures on the world are at the peak, and we have seen what is happening in Antarctica, we have seen what is happening to many other parts of the world, we have seen what is happening to weather conditions in Europe, in US, in India. I think it's getting bad to worst. And I think it behooves us to take action proactively, and we can't leave everything to Government of India and Government of US and governments. I think corporate sector also has to be a partner to the government in countering these threats. India has a triple problem. One is that the growth of GDP, which is 7 to 8%, has to be not only matched by growth of power sector, but actually power sector has to grow much faster, because there are large sections of society, especially on the lower strata of society, which do not have power today. There are large sections of industrial economy, and I've been in manufacturing sector for 17 years, and I know factories, data centers, manufacturing units, campuses, they have large DGs, large-scale diesel generators, even now, very expensive, where the power is generated, even if it is for 2 hours a day or 5 hours a day, at the rate of 12 rupees to 18 rupees, which is exorbitant, very exorbitant. So that is the first problem of India. Second problem is that the environment, out of the 15 big high pollution cities of the world, unfortunately we have 14 cities out of 15 cities. And I'm not blaming the power sector, I'm saying it is a combination of power generation through thermal and other means. It is the gensets, small and big gensets, it is the vehicles, all into one, lead to this highest pollution in the world, and I really feel very upset that what I used to do when I was a child, I used to go out and play when I used to come back from school. And I remember at 7 o'clock or 8 o'clock when it got dark and my mother had to come slap me and get me back home. Because, you know, we children never used to go back home because we were in the park. But now children don't go to the park because one, internet is is a big culprit, and of course pollution is bad. So this is a serious situation of India, and I feel very upset that we are not able to give a fresh and pure environment to our children. And the third issue of India is affordability, which maybe the world doesn't, Western world doesn't have, but India has. The people under the poverty line in India, and of course that segment of people are coming down because GDP is growing, but still there are millions of people who do not have either a power connectivity to their homes or cannot afford the power at 6 rupees, 7 rupees, whatever rate they get it as. So clearly the affordability limit or affordability threshold of that strata of society may be 3 rupees, less than 3 rupees, 2 rupees, 2.5 rupees, I don't know. It should be somewhere there, but it cannot be 6 rupees or 7 rupees. And that's why they don't use it. Some have connectivity, some don't have connectivity, so hence they are anyway not connected. Some have connectivity, but they don't get power, and some have connectivity, they get power, but they can't use it because it's too expensive. So these are the three issues of India, which luckily government is very, very conscious of this challenge, and government is trying its best to government actually is determined to face all this challenge, find solutions, and especially new solutions. And we have noticed in the last 2-3 years, the power situation in the country is better. At least my friends in UP, for example, they're telling me they're getting close to 18 to 20 hours a day, which is very, very significantly higher than 6 to 8 hours or 10 hours a day they were getting till about 12 to 18 months back. So that's a massive change. UP is our #1 state, 220 million people. It's bigger than a country, bigger than Nigeria, bigger than many other countries of the world. So if these states like UP and Bihar are not getting full power, 24-hour power, it's really sad. But things are improving, definitely improving. And the other good news where government has been very brave, and I will say very futuristic, is that the renewables target for 22 was announced as 175, and now they are enhancing it to maybe 200 gigawatt, which is fantastic news for the country and for the children and the next generation which is coming up. And second, the target of 2030 was taken at 350 gigawatt, solar and wind. And now that target has been enhanced to 500 gigawatt, making India the biggest renewables market of the world. And I think I look at it in a very positive light, because government has taken a bold and brave step to safeguard the future generations of this country. And I think we owe it to them to give them great environment. We owe it to them to give them affordable power, especially to lower strata of our society. And if we don't do it, I think we are missing out millions and millions of people's capability in growing this country, growing the GDP every day. Now, the issue is that solar and wind both are intermittent, and therefore they do not give us a complete solution, which is good and bad. It's good because at least they are clean. It's bad because they are not a stable base load or stable power source for 24 hours or whatever time you need it. And therefore storage, batteries are important, and luckily storage, I was reading this case study of Tesla in Australia, where Tesla has put up a 129 megawatt hour storage battery, lithium-ion battery, and it's working very well, and it's been tested, etc. And so there are many such case studies in the world where storage has picked up very well, is giving the grid a lot of stability. And but the storage cost today is very high. It's very expensive, maybe $300. And obviously, in a country like India, which has affordability as its first principle in any service, it has to be below $100. So clearly, there's a time to go. Now, how much time that is, we don't know. Maybe 4 years, 5 years, or maybe more. But clearly, storage is the solution to make solar and wind as a stable service whenever you need it, not intermittent. But there's time for that. There are 2-3 other technologies beyond lithium-ion which are being experimented. Some are at lab stage, some are at commercial or semi-commercial stage. But I'm very happy that this is happening because this solution is critical for the world. Because then, once solar and wind get a storage battery at affordable cost, then I think we have a solution, we have a clean solution for affordable power and a clean solution for clean environment. And it's not far away, we just have to be patient. Like last few years, we were patient with solar, and solar started with 17 rupees and now it's 2.5 rupees. Similarly, we just need to be patient with storage battery. And in last 5 years, the solar module costs went down by 85%, and I believe that next 5 years, storage cost curve will also go down significantly. Not only because of technology, but also because of economies of scale. Because today the scale is low. I mean, the manufacturing scale of storage battery in the world is low. I mean, there are good factories. Tesla has good factories. There's Panasonic, there's Samsung, there's many other companies, LG Chem. But if you consolidate it, it's not as large. But in the next few years, the scale will go up tremendously. And as the scale goes up, I've seen economies really come in dramatically. And if technology and scale comes together, then there is magic. And that magic is magic of affordability. And that will happen. And I feel in 5 years, it will happen. The next issue I wanted to share was issue of Make in India, which is a very serious program of the government. And I believe that in the sector which I worked in, telecom sector, despite having 1 billion phones in India, we don't make phones. We don't make telecom equipment. Yes, we assemble them, but it's not manufactured end to end. And look at a good example of auto sector. Auto sector today, I heard somebody say that it has indigenous components of 97 to 98% in India. And there are about 10 to 15 global brands in India. And the components are made in Gurgaon, Chennai, Pune, and they're exported all over the world. They're 6 Sigma components, very high quality, low cost. And if that can happen, I'm sure it can happen in telecom and it can happen in solar and wind too. Luckily, wind is not behind. I think the wind sector, the domestic manufacturing is there, and I think that's good news. But in solar, the government has plans both for modules and for storage batteries, and I'm very happy that government is taking this sector seriously, because I think India as a country needs to be at the forefront of this new energy. India has to be at the forefront of renewables. India has to be in the forefront of electric vehicles. And I think this is a chance for us. And by the way, the only chance we had in the last 20 years, 30 years was IT, and we took that chance. Now we need to take one more big chance, where India builds a core competence in new energy. And that, when I say new energy, it is a combination of renewables and electric vehicles. If these two strong capabilities are built in India by Indian engineers, by Indian workers, Indian entrepreneurs, Indian EPC companies, Indian O&M companies, Indian manufacturing companies, I think it will be fantastic for the economy and fantastic for our future. Because just like IT gives employment to millions of young Indians, this could also give employment to millions of young Indians. Because this sector of new energy, both EVs and renewables, will be maybe one of the largest sectors in 10, 15 years from now. And government has to, and government has fortunately started working on a strategic plan to do so. I think the entire industry is also committed to supporting the government. There are a lot of good Indian companies, there are a lot of good multinationals like SoftBank who are committed to India and committed to the future of new energy, both renewables and electric vehicles. And I think the great news will be if India, in telecom, for example, we were behind the world. I remember when I joined telecom, we were a few years behind the world, maybe 3 years, 4 years, 5 years behind the world, which is not a good news. I think India has reached to a stage where it's the largest domestic market in the world. And I think if you're the largest domestic market in the world, then I think we need to be running along with the world rather than being behind the world. So my optimistic view is that India will run along with the world in this global transformation of both energy and transport sector when renewables and electric vehicles lead the world to a much better world for our future generations. Thank you.
As Manoj was mentioning, his career in telecoms gives a very good insight into how do you scale what seems expensive technology, but direct it at some of the poorest consumers and get some of the largest markets in the world. And that's the kind of transition we've been talking about even in renewables. So Manoj has a few minutes. So I wanted to just use that opportunity to ask him a bunch of questions, and if there are questions from the floor, pose them to him. So I'm going to go first. Manoj, the session we were having just before you entered the room was on risks in emerging economies. 3 years ago, I went and met some of the earliest investors in Tesla, who have their offices in Palo Alto, and they were the ones who had taken a bet on Tesla. And I asked them, if you moved out of the US, would you come and set up shop in India? And they dithered, and then they said, perhaps not, and because of the risk perceptions, etc. Now, given your own experience across several industries, if you were to advise big investors, venture capitalists, why India is the place to take some big bets, not just on deployment, but also on manufacturing, also on new technology development, what would you tell them?
No, very important issue, because today if you do a scan of the world, you know which markets are large and which markets are growing and which markets are open to change. These are 3 parameters: large, growing, and open to change. And I want to understand beyond China and India, and I'll talk about China versus India later, but first is beyond China and India, which is that market? There's no other market. One large, both China and India are billion each and growing, and both GDP is growing 7%, 8%, which actually is the highest growth of any country in the world, and therefore 7 to 8% is going into the pockets of each consumer every year. And hence the market is becoming larger and larger. And recently there was a study that how the poverty level will come down, is coming down much faster in India than it was earlier. And by 25, it will come down to a very low level. So therefore, this is the best years of India, I feel. Second is growth. Now, growth from lower strata of society to middle class and to upper middle class is a fantastic phenomena of economic growth. Many foreigners don't understand this. India's big stability is because we have 300 million middle class who have aspiration to go to upper middle class. And then there are about 500–600 million lower middle class who want to become middle class. Now, there are so many aspirations, and I can tell you, out of the 500,000 villages we covered in my earlier assignment, I personally visited 100,000 villages of India. Maybe the only CEO who has visited so many rural areas. And I used to talk to...
That's also the only bureaucrat who would have ever visited 100,000 villages.
Yeah. So I used to talk to young boys and girls of 8 years, 10 years, 12 years, and I used to ask them, what do you want to do? And you know, what they said? They said, I want to be a software engineer, I want to be a programmer, I want to be a systems engineer, I want to be this. I was really amazed, because that is the grassroots of India which is growing, and I think that is a fantastic aspiration to have. So growth not only in terms of 7–8%, but growth also in terms of people's aspirations.
Sure.
And today, thanks to this government, I think there's a lot of confidence in India, within India and on India outside India. The third issue is ability to change. I think that is very good. Now luckily, the entire Western world, and I'm not being critical, the entire developed world has a trained incapacity towards a lot of new things, because they're already used to something which is already there. For example, again to give you my earlier example, in '95, there were only 30 million telephones in India, and that to landlines. And we jumped straight from no phone to GSM. It was a leap, technology leap. And I don't think people felt it. People started using it, and same technology leap is happening today. Look at Aadhaar card. Which country has so many, nearly billion Aadhaar cards? Look at so many things which are happening now, online. And China is going through exactly the same. China is, of course, ahead of us in terms of Alibaba and many other. But India is running faster now. And I believe in the next decade, this will be the golden decade of India. And frankly, if any multinational doesn't participate because it believes that there's a quota of investment and maybe India deserves a small quota and some other market, that's fine. That's a decision by the board. But I believe that there's no other market which is bigger than India in the next 10 years. Because China, comparatively, just last comment on China, China has reached a certain degree of stability, certain degree of plateau, and their growth, their 6% growth actually is very large, because they're 6% on a massive base. The 6% is fantastic if what China is doing, but still, the future growth, and that's why China is doing this new global projects in
so the One Belt, One Road.
One Belt, One Road, and many other things, because their domestic market is now slowing down a bit, whereas India is domestic market strength.
So any question? I think there's a nice mantra: the size of the market, the growth of the market, and the willingness to change in the market. Anyone has a question for Mr. Kohli? Anyone disagrees that this will be India's decade of golden growth? Dr. Sharma, microphone here, please.
How do we make e-vehicles compatible with the MS-based, diesel-based, and CNG-based vehicles? That's one thing. But then the most important thing is that how do we tell the Department of Revenue of Government of India, which charges 47% excise on the hybrid vehicles, and make them aware that e-vehicle baby is yet to be born in India?
Okay, again, let me assure you that government is very sensitive to this point you're making. Government actually wants to give highest priority to electric vehicles. And you will see the change in the next 6 months, very positive change. I'm actually chairing the CII task force on electric vehicles and batteries, and I'm working closely with government on this. And the entire intention of government has not come out in the open. I think they're working very hard. In the next 6 months, 12 months, you will see a lot of changes coming in this arena. Department of Revenue is also very sensitive. I remember before telecom, I was in an industry called air conditioning. And the excise duty at that time was 300% on air conditioning. And we presented to Raja Chalya. You remember the Raja Chalya, who was the leader of tax transformation.
Yeah.
And we said, actually for the first time, industry gave a challenge that if you bring it down to 50% from 300, your revenues will grow. And that happened in the first year itself. So Department of Revenue, I'm sure, is ready to take that challenge, and they understand that lower excise duties, etc., will lead to higher revenues. But coming back to EVs now, I feel that EVs will finally be more affordable than IC engine cars, and that is not far away because EVs is a very simple car without the battery. If you look at the EV without the battery, it is chassis, it has tires, it has
and a boot,
and a windscreen, etc., etc. That's all it is.
Pretty much.
So there's no engine. There are thousands and thousands of components are not there, and there is a battery. So today, because the scale is so small, and again, let me tell you about China, because I drove EVs in China. I was on the electric buses in Shenzhen, in Beijing, Shanghai. You look at where they are going. They are at least 4 or 5 years ahead of us, if not more. So already the price gap is coming down to a much smaller gap. And I believe by 2020, the gap may be either be zero or very small. So I'm saying time is not far away. We just need some more patience and it'll happen.
Thank you, Manoj.
Thank you.